I must apologise for being unable to speak Japanese, and I'd like to thank Yumi for translating for me today. The South African bass player, Johnny Diani, once said that anybody who talks about music is a liar. Well, I'm going to lie a little bit, I suppose. I think it's possible to maybe drop some clues about what music's about. I think in some ways we never get to actually play music. We get glimpses of what it is, but we never actually get there, because if we get there, it's over. At the age of 11, I passed by something called the 11 Plus and went to grammar school. I was brought up by my father's grandparents in the countryside, very rural upbringing. And there was a kid in my class who had a guitar. And I asked my grandparents when they went to the town that month to buy me a guitar, which they did. I think one of the most important things, or one of the nice things about life, is when you can find a world where you can have an adventure and you can share that adventure with other people. And for me, the guitar has been a friend and also a key to unlock that world in which to have those adventures. Now, a colleague of Johnny Diani, a very good piano player called Chris McGregor, was once asked what his favourite instrument was. He said the drum, the ear drum. Listening is so important, and it's a kind of almost a miracle how air is elastic and you hit it and it bounces back. And this movement of air hits the eardrum. From this movement of air against the eardrum, the brain interprets it as sound and reads so many things into that message of sound. It can tell you there is a bird flying overhead, your mother is calling you in for tea, the cat is running away from a dog, a motorcycle is going down the street. All of these things hitting the ear as air movement, and the brain interprets these. There are only 7 variables to sound. They are pitch, that's whether it's a high note or a low note. Dynamics, how loud it is. Location, where the sound comes from. Timbre, whether it's a soft sound or a hard sound. Speed, tempo, rhythm. Location, where the sound comes from. And also depth, which is how far away the sound is. Yes. So, in, if you like, conventional music, it tends to work with pitch, rhythm, harmony, these things. And I'm very interested in all the elements of sound being able to be used as musical material. And so this means that the connection between the sounds and your improvising can be taken from any of these points, not just from the point of view of tonality or harmony or a rhythmic basis, but you can play something that sounds in the same textural area, the timbral area, or you can play something that contrasts with that, and you can use all of these elements with which to create your music. So anything, any sound you can create can be used as valid musical material. And for me, one of the, well, he made many contributions, but for me, one of the most interesting contributions made by John Cage was the notion of a portable aesthetic. which means that you can listen to something and hear that as music. You can listen to the sounds of nature and hear that as music. Any sound is valid musical material. But music is so much more than sound. The English conductor, Sir Thomas Beecham, said that the English don't understand music, but they like the kind of noise it makes. And sometimes one finds in the world of free improvisation, people who make the right kind of noise, but the music isn't there. And I think we find that in all art practice. People kind of wear the right sort of clothes, but actually where's the depth to their work? Aha. Well, I was just wondering that myself. What is depth? Depth, yes. Depth comes from engagement, I feel. I think it's an intellectual engagement, an emotional engagement, and also a physical engagement with the work. And I feel that that's part of where the depth lies. Many years ago in Brussels, there was a group of musicians who decided not to learn how to play their instruments. So they would get together every week and each play a different instrument each week. The result was the music didn't develop at all, and it always sounded the same. They did this in order to try and sound fresh and do something new. But of course, it's like the old saying, if you don't know history, then you're forced to relive its mistakes. And so, although they kept swapping instruments, they kept turning out the same sort of music. And after about a year of doing this, they decided to give up the experiment. So let's think a little bit about how music develops. I think one way, coming from the countryside, is the rural approach. How, for instance, a farmer will have some land, and one year he will put water on the land, the next year some fertiliser, the next year build a barn, and so on. So he starts from a central point and moves out from that point. Contrasting with that is something I call the urban approach, which is maybe less analogue, much more digital. It's in packages. And when we're living in a city, we're one person at home, we're one person on the bus or the tube or the train going to work, we're another person in the office, we're another person at the weekends, and so on. So we have these kind of, there's a linear progression, but it's a linear progression in blocks. And finally, there's something I like to call the quantum rabbit. Ideas just pop up suddenly, over here, hello, and then over here, hello, and you don't know where they come from. Yes, sorry. So we have to be aware of these things. And in a way, what we do is we have frames. And when we listen to something, we frame it in terms of something we understand. So we might be listening to a pitch element or a timbral element and all these different frames. And when we play with other musicians, our job is to somehow frame their work and make it sound good. Not to show how good we are, because if we do that, somebody's going to think, well, if they're so good, why are they playing with these people? Because you're there to make the group sound good. It's about not having an ego that says, look at me, I'm the greatest. It's about saying we're here to play music together. It's about sharing. Also, there are no mistakes. If you think you've made a mistake, then play it again, and somebody will think that you did it on purpose. So you have to be aware of everything that's going on, what you intend, what your colleagues intend and are playing, and what the accidents and the mistakes are. Music proceeds by imitation. By that I mean, if you hear something you like, you want to be able to repeat it. Oh, I just played that, I like that, I'm going to do it again. Whether it's an accident or whether it's something you've just discovered. So you do imitate the sounds in order to help you learn. But my friend Sabu at the back there is absolutely correct in saying, be inspired by, but do not imitate. And by that he means, don't try and play like John Coltrane, because you're not John Coltrane, you will never be John Coltrane. John Coltrane is John Coltrane. And I believe that every human being has a unique approach, a unique musicality, a unique creativity. And it's all our responsibilities to find that uniqueness within ourselves, to share that, because that's what we're here for. So let's look a little bit at material. Why does it sound like it does, free improvised music? One of the things in order to improvise is to have some kind of material or language that is ambiguous. For instance, if we played a dominant seventh chord, in conventional music that would lead to the tonic chord, normally speaking. I mean, obviously not always. But that limits what the next thing is going to be, what the next step is. And what we want is something that's malleable, something that lends itself to change. So the poet Libby Houston described her poems as being like golf balls, in that if you take a golf ball and you unwrap it, it's full of rubber bands and they ping off in all sorts of directions. And her poems were like that. It wasn't a hard fact of a poem and it's only this. It's something you can interpret in so many different ways. So in a way it's playing with a controlled ambiguity. And we want to develop material that helps us do that. Everybody has their clichés. Everybody has things they come back to. It's not new every time you play. But what happens over time is that some things you don't use anymore and new things come in. Or you might recycle some of the old stuff. Maybe 2 or 3 years later, you think, I was playing that years ago, it's come back, why? Just as an aside, the French, I suppose, absurdist playwright come symbolist, the rather remarkable Alfred Jarry, said that clichés are the armature of the absolute. And it's quite true that a cliché represents a lot more than a few notes. It becomes something personal to you. And that's again part of this uniqueness. You have your own, you develop your own style, which you are constantly trying to subvert because you're wanting to throw away as much of you and to be as open to the whole world of music, the whole universe of music that's out there. So how do we proceed with our bag of clichés, if you like? Our own individuality, our own view of this universe of music. I think there are probably 4 main ways in which to play. One is playing solo. One is playing in a group as a one-off event. The third one is coming together for short-term projects. And the fourth one is to have a long-term playing relationship in an established group. All 4 of these things have different things to offer. as a practice and for the improviser. Playing solo is an interesting prospect because I think everybody plays solo, but they might not do that in public. And I think one thing I've found in putting on concerts is that sometimes I offer people their first opportunity to play solo. And their playing, we would say, goes ahead in leaps and bounds. It's quite fantastic because they get over their nerves and adrenaline and all of this, and they're kind of looking at themselves playing in a different way. And that distance from what you're doing, learning that distancing from what you're doing is great. So you're not up close and in a mess, as it were. It's important somehow to have some kind of distance, some kind to sit back and understand what you're doing. You're kind of watching yourself as you're performing. So I can recommend for everybody to play some kind of solo. If you're a little bit frightened, do it. And one of the great things about music, I have to say, is that nobody dies. You know, it's not guns and bombs. You can make mistakes, and as I say, repeat them. It doesn't matter. You've tried something, it doesn't work, you don't like it. Try something else again. As Samuel Beckett says, fail again, fail better. As in all art practices, it's good to understand a little bit of the materials. Nobody understands everything about all of them. Nobody really gets to play the guitar completely. You're always learning something new. Everybody is different. But it's good to understand the materials. And it's also important, while taking inspiration from everywhere, from nature, from other art disciplines, from books, from street noise, from wherever, that you recognise the difference between certain practices. For instance, the abstract expressionists used to improvise together. So you maybe have 6 of them working on one canvas together. And you might think that's the same as a sextet playing free improvisation together musically. But it's not, because one thing, you can't focus on the whole canvas at the same time. Whereas when you're listening, you can hear the whole of the sound at one time, which you can't do in painting. Also, at the end of the improvisation, you have a painting. At the end of the free improvisation, as Eric Dolphy said, it's gone in the air. So, I once spoke with a professor of psychology at Castle University, and I asked him, do you guys think of transcendental experience? And he said, yes, we recognise it, but the only thing we really know is that if somebody has a transcendental experience and says, I am having a transcendental experience, it goes. So it's a very difficult thing to pin down, improvised music, because it's gone on the air. One thing we do know is that the audience and the players share this unique experience. I don't think it happens in any other form, where the musicians don't know what they're going to play, the audience don't know what they're going to play, and we discover the music together. That's a very unique experience. Now, one of the things I'm hoping to do in the workshops are various exercises to develop aspects of playing and aspects of listening. But it's important to realise that these are exercises. It's very easy to take these things and think, oh, I've written a piece, I've constructed a composition. And some people do that. But I'm quite keen not to follow that track because of people doing that. And I feel it's, if we can keep it as open as possible, but while recognising that sometimes to swim against the tide makes your muscles stronger. And that's what exercising is about. That's also what practice is about on an instrument. But again, like analogies between music and painting, you find analogies between music and sport. But football players run on the spot, like this in one place when they're exercising. But when it comes to a football game, you don't see them go onto the football pitch and stand there doing that. And that's one of the reasons that if we have exercises in workshop, that's purely in the workshop. When it comes to the playing situation, then it's much more open. And so for the concert on Saturday, we'll be working towards making a concert, not about parading a series of exercises. And the idea is not about virtuosity. Many years ago, a trumpet player called Maldi told me he started by learning to play one note on the trumpet, and he spent all week learning to play this note very well. And then he sat in with the group, and he waited till he felt it was time to play this one note. And he played it. When he felt it was time to stop, he stopped. The following week, he learned 3 more notes. And he carried on learning more and more notes. So if you have one note, please bring that one note along. It's not about an exercise in virtuosity. It's about playing together and working together. And that doesn't necessarily mean conventional musical instruments. Any sound is valid musical material. I was once interviewed for a regional newspaper in Chichester, I think. And I explained that I was giving a workshop there. And the newspaper man said, "Oh, you don't have to be able to play this music." That's not what I meant, of course, but that's what he wanted to write in his newspaper. All you have to do is bring whatever you've got and your ears, and think open ears. Don't imagine what the music will sound like. Let the music come to you. Too many people, I find, try and, like fitting a square peg into a round hole, we say. Too many people try to make music do something. Music can get on quite well without you. Just let it come to you, and you'll be carried away on an adventure which we can share. I should have hit the microphone again to make it look as though I did it on purpose. So please remember, it's music. It's something that it's one of the I feel it's one of the great achievements of us upper primates. That it's something that engages more of the brain than most activities. It's about structural thought, Brocken area 10 in the brain, and it's one of the last things to go before you die. It's remarkable stuff. But as I said before, speaking of dying, it's music, it's only music, nobody dies, it's not war, it's not nasty, it's a celebration of being human, and it's a celebration of the universe. Okay, thank you. If you have any questions and answers.